Without the enjoyment of food, drinks, sex, music, and art, life is not worth living, writes the ancient philosopher Epicurus. In a letter to his friend Monosius, he summarized it as follows: "We call pleasure the beginning and end of the blessed life, for we recognize pleasure as the first good innate in us, and from pleasure we begin every act of choice and avoidance, and to pleasure we return again, using the feeling as the standard by which we judge every good." Epicurus believed that pleasure is the most important aspect of a good life. The more we enjoy ourselves, the better our life is. He even suggests that pleasure is more important than any other value, including moral ones. He emphasized how important this idea was to him and supposedly said, "I despise nobility when it doesn't bring about pleasure, and I despise those who mindlessly praise it." It's evident that such statements won't elicit much agreement. Greek poet Timon labeled him with unflattering terms, comparing him to a dog and a pig. Another philosopher, Epictetus, from the Stoic school of thought, branded him as a pleasure seeker. No wonder that the Stoics were the main adversaries of the Epicureans in ancient times. While there might be critics, not everyone disagreed with Epicurus. Notable thinkers like Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who was far from being a pleasure seeker, drew upon Epicurus's ideas. Similarly, philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche also acknowledged him. Karl Marx even based his dissertation on Epicurus's philosophy. Moreover, Karl Jaspers praised Epicurus's teachings, calling them a well-thought-out blueprint for living. In fact, upon closer examination, Epicurus's philosophy reveals itself as an ethical guide, which certainly advocates sensual pleasures, but by no means in an excessive manner. Epicurus believed that the purpose of philosophy is to achieve happiness. While he also delved into natural philosophy, the philosophical discipline concerned with the interpretation and explanation of nature, his primary aim was to help people make better choices to lead happy lives. Epicurus advocated for a kind of happiness that spans a lifetime, a notion that might seem hard to believe today. After all, can anyone truly be happy all the time? Epicurus thought so. He wasn't talking about short moments of joy that sporadically appear and vanish. Rather, he promoted a more stable state of happiness, one not wholly subject to chance or external influences. He believed that true happiness should be something we can control. Essentially, he advocated for the idea that everyone is responsible for their own happiness, reminiscent of the saying, "Every man is the architect of his own fortune." Epicurus's goal was to guide people on how to achieve this enduring happiness and maintain it. Epicurus was born around 341 BC on the island of Samos. He had an intense passion for philosophy from a young age. By the time he was just 20, he had already established his own school of philosophy. At 35, he relocated to Athens and purchased a garden called Kepos, which subsequently became the name of his philosophical school. Epicurus's Kepos became the fourth major philosophical school in Athens, joining the ranks of Plato's Academy, Aristotle's Lyceum, and the Stoa. Epicurus continued to teach in the Kepos for over 30 years until his death around 270 BC. The Kepos was a unique learning community. It welcomed everyone, even women and slaves, which was rare back then. Friendship and mutual assistance were highly valued. However, philosophically, there was a strict hierarchy. In this respect, there was only one master, Epicurus himself. The students learned his teachings by heart and even recited them before going to bed. Outside his school, however, Epicurus did not enjoy a high reputation. Epicurus and his students always had to defend themselves against accusations of immorality. In Athens, rumors spread about the supposed excessive celebrations at the Kepos. Over time, even criticisms emerged about the core tenets of his teachings, particularly his emphasis on pleasure as a primary pursuit. The word for pleasure in Greek is hedon, and this is where the term hedonism comes from, with Epicurus being its most famous advocate. As a result, he and his students have been the declared adversaries of almost all other ethical philosophies that emphasize self-discipline, virtue, and asceticism. To support his fundamental hedonistic thesis, Epicurus points out that even infants clearly seek pleasure and avoid pain. From this, he concludes that nature has provided us with pleasure and pain as tools for guiding our decision-making. Therefore, what is good is that which gives us pleasure, and what is bad is that which causes us discomfort. Consequently, happiness is logically defined as the highest level of pleasure. Contrary to what Epicurus's opponents often assumed, this does not mean that we should indulge excessively in pleasure everywhere, because excesses often come with harmful side effects that undermine pleasure, and consequently, long-term happiness. To avoid this, we need what is known as Felicific calculus, or the Hedonic calculus. This term was not coined by Epicurus, but was formulated in the 19th century by utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham. However, it precisely captures Epicurus's intention. The Hedonic calculus calculates which behavior, in sum and in the long run, leads to the highest overall pleasure. This calculation considers the potential negative outcomes of actions. As a result, it sometimes advises moderation. For example, one might choose not to drink another beer, even though it would lead to more pleasure in the present moment, because they know they might feel unwell afterward. In this case, the expected discomfort is valued more highly than the pleasure of drinking. So the hedonic calculus advises against drinking the beer, because in the overall calculation of pleasure and discomfort, it would result in a negative outcome. For Epicurus, maximizing pleasure does not mean pursuing every pleasure to the utmost extent all the time. Such behavior, according to Epicurus, would be short-sighted and counterproductive. Instead, he recommends a rational approach to pleasure to achieve the best possible overall outcome. To attain a maximum level of pleasure, and thus long-term happiness securely, Epicurus recommends two key strategies: limiting our desires and actively addressing sources of discomfort. Strategy 1. Limiting our desires. Epicurus divides desires into two groups: necessary and unnecessary. Of our desires, some are natural and necessary, others are natural but not necessary. Others, again, are neither natural nor necessary, but are due to illusory opinion. Additionally, he emphasizes that only the necessary desires must be satisfied, because desires that don't lead to pain when unfulfilled are considered unnecessary. All such desires as led to no pain when they remain ungratified are unnecessary, and the longing is easy got rid of. Hence, it's possible and advisable to unlearn and relinquish all unnecessary desires. Epicurus argued that upon closer examination, only 5 desires are genuinely necessary: food, clothing, shelter, friends, and philosophy. The importance of nourishment, clothing, shelter, and companionship is self-evident, as they constitute fundamental human needs, and their absence would lead to significant discomfort. However, to grasp that, beyond these 4 needs, a person requires nothing else for their happiness. One needs the guidance of philosophy. Therefore, the role of philosophy in achieving happiness lies in this profound realization. Having only a small number of fundamental needs offers a significant advantage. It's relatively easy to obtain the means to meet them in normal circumstances. Basic food, simple clothing, and a modest place to live are typically enough. In contrast, fulfilling non-essential desires, such as the craving for gourmet meals, fashionable attire, and extravagant lifestyle or constant parties, requires more effort. Nevertheless, it's possible to pursue these desires and try to satisfy them when the opportunity arises, as long as it doesn't come with significant drawbacks. However, it's vital to remember that they are not essential. You can choose to go without them and still lead a happy life. Strategy 2. Addressing sources of discomfort. In Epicurus's philosophy, the second strategy for achieving a high level of pleasure and, consequently, happiness involves addressing sources of discomfort. According to Epicurus, discomfort primarily arises from pain or fear. Against pain, he recommends 3 practical remedies. Firstly, he suggests that we weigh the pain against potential future pleasure. Take exercise as an example. By enduring the short-term discomfort of working out, we can enjoy better health, greater mental strength, and thus, more happiness in the future. This way, we can make wiser decisions. The second approach to addressing discomfort caused by pain is compensating for it with pleasure. For instance, you can listen to music or have a massage to help soothe or lessen the pain. If the first 2 of his practical remedies against pain prove ineffective, Epicurus offers one last consolation. Either time or suffering is brief. This means that severe pain usually lasts only a short while and might lead to a quick resolution, while chronic pain is milder and can be eased or balanced by pleasurable experiences. It's essentially a reminder of the finite nature of suffering. Fear is the second significant obstacle to pleasure, and we need to deal with it if we aim for happiness. This is where the importance of natural philosophy and Epicurus's ethical system becomes clear. According to Epicurus, the 2 biggest fears are the fear of God's punishing us and the fear of dying. When it comes to the fear of God's punishing us, natural philosophy helps by explaining that nature follows predictable laws, not random divine decisions. While most people no longer experience fear of divine punishment today, Epicurus's core idea remains relevant. Knowledge and information can alleviate many forms of anxiety. The more familiar fear to us is the fear of death, but Epicurus argues that death doesn't affect us because we no longer exist to experience it. Death, the most awful of evils, is nothing to us, seeing that, when we are, death is not come, and when death is come, we are not. These short recommendations on limiting our desires and addressing sources of discomfort can be found in the Tetrapharmacus, meaning the 4-part remedy, a summary of the first 4 principal doctrines of Epicureanism. These recommendations reveal that, for Epicureans, the pursuit of the highest pleasure doesn't primarily involve constantly seeking new and greater pleasures. Instead, it focuses on avoiding discomfort. Epicurus believes that true happiness is found not in extravagant pleasures, but in a life of contentment and freedom from physical and mental suffering. A simple and contented way of life is, therefore, healthy, keeps us active, prepares us for challenging times, and makes us more appreciative of pleasures without making us emotionally dependent on them. This makes it evident that, according to Epicurus, happiness is not about experiencing overwhelming bursts of pleasure, but about enjoying a serene and undisturbed sense of well-being. He aptly describes it with the Greek word ataraxia, generally translated as equanimity or tranquility. This is what Epicurus strives for. Not extreme ecstasy, but the calm and peaceful state of ataraxia.